Hi everyone, welcome to Best Recapped Movies channel. Today we want to speak about Death Sentence movie. This movie about a man and gangster group. This video contains spoiler. The story of the film is about a man named Nicholas Hume, who is an employee of an insurance company. He has a wife, Helen, and two sons, Brendan and Lucas, and loves his family and spending time with them. Brandon, the older son, is an amateur hockey player. One day he goes to one of the nearby cities to participate in a competition, so Nick decides to accompany his son in this competition. At night, on the way back, two cars from a criminal gang are harassing Nick and Brandon. Ignoring them, Nick goes to the gas station to get gas. Brandon goes to the supermarket to buy drinks. At the same time, criminals attack the supermarket with the intention of stealing. After seeing the scene, Nick, who is getting gasoline, immediately runs to the supermarket. But another car that is trying to escape accidentally hits Nick. One of the criminals wounds Brandon in the throat with a knife and then they runs away. Nick gets up and quickly runs to the supermarket. Nick manages to stop one of the criminals named Joe before he escapes and unmasks him. Joe after escaping from Nick, while his other accomplices ran away and left him alone. In the middle of the street, he starts swearing at them when a car crashes into him from. Nick rushes to Brandon to take him to the hospital for treatment, but it is too late and Brandon dies. Nick goes to the police station to identify Joe and introduces him to the police, until the trial court is held for him. Before the trial begins, Nick is consulting with his lawyer about the case. The lawyer tells him that they can reach a deal that will sentence Joe to 3 to 5 years in prison. Nick is surprised because he expects Joe to spend the rest of his life in prison for murder. The lawyer explains that there were no other witnesses at the crime scene. There was no CCTV. And there is no other evidence to convict Joe of murder, so it is not possible to prove the crime at the moment. Then the lawyer explains that Joe's motive for Brandon's murder was not robbery, and in fact, this is a test to enter the gangster club. The court is held and the judge asks Nick to testify about the events of that night, but when Nick sees Joe's happy face, he cannot accept that Joe will go to prison for only a short time after killing his son, and then freely join the gangster club. So Nick avoids testifying in court and says that it was dark. There were a lot of people there and he is not sure if Joe did it. The judge declares Joe innocent so that he can be freed. Nick has decided to punish Joe himself and all the members of that gangster group. He waits for Joe to leave the court. The group members come to greet Joe. Nick follows them to get information about them and finds Joe's residence. So he goes back to the garage at midnight to find a knife for himself. Lucas notices Nick's return and comes to the garage to ask Nick about the details of what happened. At this moment, Helen also comes to the garage. Nick explains to Helen that the court has released Joe, and then he secretly takes a knife with him and leaves the garage. Nick goes to Joe's residence and waits for Joe to leave his house. Joe leaves the house to throw garbage in the trash can. At this moment, Nick gets out of the car to go to Joe. But a woman leaves her house. Nick immediately hides his face so as not to be recognized. Then he goes to Joe and after fighting with Joe, he injures him with a knife and kills him. Terrified, Nick leaves the place and throws the knife into a river and returns home. The next day, we see Billy Darley, the leader of the group, who goes to meet the boss of the city's gangsters. Billy and his gang work for him. Then Billy returns to the group and finds that Joe has been killed. Nick has returned to his workplace when Detective Wallace comes to him and informs him that Joe has been killed. The detective notices Nick's strange reaction and his injured left hand. Billy is furious about Joe's death and wants to find her killer. One of the group members says that his sister saw someone in a suit. Billy immediately realizes that Nick did it. They go to Nick to kill him. Nick, who noticed their presence, runs away from them. Nick has to throw his bag while running away and goes to a parking lot. Then he activates the alarm by hitting the cars to mislead them. The group members spread out to find Nick. One of the people who is looking for Nick on the top floor of the parking lot gets into a fight with him. After fighting with him in the car, when the car is falling from the top floor of the parking lot, at the last moment, Nick escapes from the car and kills another member of the group. Then he gets into his car and runs away from the parking lot. At this moment, Helen calls Nick and tells him that Lucas did not come home. Nick guesses that Lucas went to the scene of Brandon's murder. So he quickly goes there and brings Lucas back home. Billy, furious at the death of another of his men, makes another plan to kill Nick. He finds photos of his family from Nick's bag. He gives a package to one of his people to go to Nick's workplace and deliver it to him. Inside the box is a picture of Nick's family, which means that Billy is going to kill all the other members of Nick's family first. There is a contact number behind the photo. Nick calls. Billy threatens to kill Nick's family members, and Nick replies that if he gets close to them, he will kill him just like he killed his friend. Billy replies that Joe was not his friend, but was his brother, and he comes to him to kill Nick's family. Nick immediately calls Detective Wallace and explains the story to her. Then he rushes back home. The detective asks Nick the reason for Billy's anger, and she knows that it is because Nick killed Billy's men. Nick avoids answering and says he did nothing wrong. The detective explains to him the danger of conflict with Billy and his group members. Nick asks the detective to help him protect his family from the police. Helen, who found out about the incident, criticizes Nick for doing this, but she tells him that she loves Nick and will stay with him. In the middle of the night, 2 police forces have been deployed to guard Nick's house. The sound of the car horn attracts the attention of Nick and Helen. Nick realizes that the policemen have been killed. Billy's men have raided Nick's house to kill him. Nick gets involved with them, but after a few scenes, he fights. Billy and his men arrest all the members of Nick's family. Billy shoots all 3. But Nick survives and is treated in the hospital. After regaining consciousness, Detective Wallace blames Nick for what happened, and she considers the responsibility of killing his family and policemen to be with him. She then tells Nick that Lucas is still alive. Nick rushes to Lucas's room and asks the detective to be alone with him for a moment to express his feelings. Then Nick is determined to avenge his family against Billy and escapes through the window of Lucas' room. He returns to his home, prepares the necessary equipment and cashes all his savings. He then calls his friend to locate the number he has from Billy. His friend gives him the address of the liquor store. Nick goes to the liquor store, and after a fight with the owner of the liquor store, he finds the address and information of one of Billy's friends. Then he gets the address of a place to buy weapons. Nick goes to buy a gun. Here we see that the gun dealer is the leader of the gangsters of the city. Nick buys guns for more money than they are worth, so the gun dealer gives him some more ammo. When he is about to leave the place, the gun dealer realizes that Nick has a strong motive for murder. He realizes that Nick is looking for Billy. He then tells Nick that he is Billy and Joe's father, but he says that Billy has nothing to do with him and that this is between Billy and Nick. And it doesn't matter if Billy is killed. But if Nick comes to find Billy's address, he will kill him. Nick returns to his garage and prepares for battle. Then he goes to the place of one of Bailey's people. Nick breaks down the door with a shotgun and forces her to give him Billy's location and call him. Nick informs Billy that he is alive and is coming to kill him. Then he kills Billy's colleague. At this moment, Billy's father arrives, and he explains to him that someone bought a gun from him to kill Billy and he is worried about Billy. But Billy kills him by shooting him in the head. Nick picks up the dead man's car and goes to Billy's place. Then he kills another criminal with the car. Nick enters the building and kills several more of Billy's men. At this moment, Billy arrives and enters the building. After killing another one of Billy's men, Nick takes his light gun and enters the hall of the building. Billy enters the hall from behind Nick and shoots him. Nick also shoots Billy a few times. One of Billy's men enters from behind Nick and shoots Nick again. Nick immediately kills him with an arrow to the head, and then he shoots Billy again. Both of them are wounded and their guns have run out of ammunition. Then they sit together on the sofa in the hall. Billy smiles and tells Nick that he did something to him that made him one of them. At this moment, Nick takes another gun from his waist, and he asks Billy if he is ready to die, and kills him. Then Nick returns home. The police go to Nick's house to arrest him. Nick is sitting on a chair while watching his birthday video with all the family members. Detective Wallace enters and after seeing this scene informs Nick that Lucas is starting to move and is getting better. And the story ends here. If you enjoy from our video, please subscribe to our channel and like the video.